Chapter 1. Captain Hayes. I request to join the undercover plan in the silent room. Sincere Clark's voice, though low, was exceptionally powerful and clear. After a long silence, Captain Hayes's serious voice came through. Sincere, you should know how dangerous this undercover mission is. There's a very high chance you won't make it back. You were just injured. You should be focusing on recovering. Besides, will your girlfriend agree to let you go? Aren't you getting married soon? Sincere Clark knew that Captain Hayes was saying all this out of concern for him. But he was resolute. Joining this undercover operation is my personal matter. It has nothing to do with her, and I've already decided to break up with her. You don't need to consider these external factors. Captain Hayes on the other end hadn't expected this at all. Just as he was about to ask more, Sincere Clark interrupted him. Captain Hayes, you should know that among everyone in the unit, I am the most suitable for this mission. Please give me a chance. A long sigh came from the phone. After a moment of silence, Captain Hayes spoke with deep sincerity. All right, then use this next half-month to prepare thoroughly. Then wait for the organization's call. Captain Hayes's tone was quite significant, and Sincere Clark understood the implication. He wanted him to make full preparations, consider last words, arrangements for after he's gone. Undercover missions like this were always a matter of life and death. If he truly couldn't come back, he needed to account for it to his family. But now, he didn't need to account for anything to anyone. After hanging up, Sincere Clark's gaze fell upon the two photos placed by the bed. They were of the most important people in his life. The first was of his parents. The second was of his girlfriend. At the age of 10, his parents were sacrificed while on duty, leaving him an orphan. Learning that their only regrets before they died were not being able to take care of him anymore, and not achieving a first-class commendation, on the day he buried his parents' ashes, he stood before their tombstone and made a vow. Carrying on the torch, forging ahead, he would definitely inherit his parents' legacy and strive for a first-class commendation to comfort their souls in heaven. At 22, he successfully joined the Criminal Investigation Division with excellent academic performance. This was also the year he met Seraphina Bellwether. To outsiders, she was a cold, upright ace lawyer who seemed aloof from men. Yet she fell for him at first sight, finding every way to get his social media contact, inviting him out for dinner and movies, taking care of him in every way, preparing many surprises for him. He also fell into this love and agreed to be her boyfriend. After they officially started dating, she cared for him even more. When he was on overnight shifts, she would drive over in the middle of the night to bring him his favorite late-night snacks. Whenever he went out on a mission, she would be so worried and anxious, uneasy. All day, when he talked about his dreams, she would hug him with a smile and say he would definitely achieve them. Sincere Clark thought he had truly met someone worth spending his life with, until their 5th anniversary. Seraphina Bellwether gave him a shirt and told him to wear it to a very remote location for their celebration. He waited there for a long time, not for her, but only for a few masked assailants with knives. His mouth and nose were covered. He was drugged and dragged into a car. When he woke up, he found himself locked in a basement. An assailant touched his face and said something terrifying. So alike, too alike, no wonder that Bellwether chick likes you so much. But what's the use of being alike? You're not him, are you? You were just sent out as bait, weren't you? It was at that moment Sincere Clark realized what Seraphina Bellwether had hidden from him. Seraphina Bellwether had a childhood friend she grew up with, Ethan Johnson, a first-line star. The outwardly detached Seraphina was different only with him. She had secretly admired and protected him since childhood. But on the day she planned a romantic surprise to confess, Ethan Johnson was kidnapped by a crazed fan. When they finally found him, he was covered in blood, disoriented, and had since fallen into a vegetative state. And the assailant had escaped first, living under different names for many years, and had not yet been apprehended. After the incident, Seraphina Bellwether was devastated. From then on, only two things remained in her heart. The first was waiting for Ethan Johnson to wake up. The second was frantically searching for the fan's whereabouts, wanting to bring him to justice. The moment she saw Sincere Clark, she was captivated because he looked so much like Ethan Johnson. So she pursued him, using his face to channel her longing for Ethan Johnson. Besides this, she also planned to use his face to lure out the assailant. She had waited 5 years, finally getting a lead on the assailant's whereabouts, and meticulously planned everything. During the 7 hours he was held captive, Sincere Clark was tortured and left with injuries, his mental state on the verge of collapse. He was finally rescued just moments before he was to be brutally murdered. Seraphina Bellwether ultimately got what she wanted. The assailant was successfully captured. But the cost was that Sincere Clark's right hand was permanently crippled. It took him a long time to process it all, to accept that he was a substitute, and to accept the fact that his hand was ruined. With his heart turned to ash, Sincere Clark no longer held hope for love or romance. Yet the price of this was the loss of his entire faith. He could no longer be on the front lines, nor could he ever fulfill his dream of a first-class commendation. Fortunately, yesterday he heard colleagues who came to visit him chatting, mentioning that the unit was planning to take down a dark organization and needed 3 undercover agents. Currently, only 2 positions were confirmed. The third position was delayed in being filled because of the extremely dangerous responsibilities it entailed. He immediately decided to apply to join this sweep, becoming the 3rd undercover agent. He knew he would be chosen because he met all the criteria, especially since his hand was crippled, which was even more advantageous for the plan. After all, no one would suspect a person with a useless hand. For the country, and for the dream of a first-class commendation, he was resolute, with no regrets even unto death. As for Seraphina Bellwether, from now on, they would go their separate ways. He didn't want her anymore. Sincere Clark silently packed up all the things in the apartment. By the time he finished packing, it was already 11 o'clock. Footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. Seraphina Bellwether had returned home. She pushed the door open, about to say something with a smile, but then saw the things in the box and frowned. Sincere, what are you doing packing these things? Chapter 2. Sincere Clark couldn't reveal the plan to anyone, so he spoke flatly. I quit. Seraphina Bellwether froze. Weren't they going to transfer you to an administrative position? Hearing this, Sincere Clark turned and looked at her. I told you my dream is a first-class commendation. It's the front line. He was merely stating objective facts, his tone devoid of any hint of complaint. Seraphina Bellwether's heart clenched at the words. Her palms faintly perspired, and a flicker of regret crossed her eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up painful topics. Sincere Clark shook his head, zipping up the bag. It's not your fault. Though he said that, Seraphina Bellwether still felt terrible. She had hidden too much from him, and now she had even caused his hand to be crippled. She didn't know how to comfort him and spoke a little incoherently. Quitting is fine too. Just rest at home, I'll support you. Support him? Sincere Clark looked at her steadily, a mix of emotions churning inside him. She never understood him. He shook his head, not saying a word, and went to wash up and rest. After the bedroom light was turned off, Seraphina Bellwether hugged him from behind, her warm breath on his neck. She seemed to want to kiss him. Sincere Clark quickly separated them with his elbow and moved away towards the wall. Rejected, Seraphina Bellwether's tone held surprise. Sincere, sorry, my hand isn't feeling very comfortable today. I want to rest early. Okay then. Good night. 3 days later was Sincere Clark's birthday. That day, Seraphina Bellwether specially took time off work to stay home and personally cooked a large feast. Wearing a birthday hat, he looked at the table full of spicy dishes, his thoughts slowly drifting away. Seraphina Bellwether liked cooking for him, but every dish was full of chili. He had told her many times that he couldn't eat spicy food, but she always said she only knew how to cook this way. To not disappoint her, he learned to eat spicy food, often irritating his stomach and needing medication afterward. Yet he endured it willingly. Now he knew the truth, knew there was another person who liked spicy food, knew she was using him to yearn for someone else. He didn't want to make it hard for himself anymore, so he delayed picking up his chopsticks. Seraphina Bellwether quickly noticed and asked him what was wrong. Sincere Clark rolled up his sleeve, revealing the ghastly scar on his wrist, took the cake beside him, and spoke flatly. "The last checkup, the doctor said I need a bland diet." A hint of guilt flashed in Seraphina Bellwether's eyes. She picked up a plate and stood up, saying she would make something else. Sincere Clark, while unpacking the cake, called out to her, "No need, I'm not hungry. I'll eat later." Seraphina Bellwether froze for a moment, couldn't say anything else, and just helped him put the candles in and light them. He closed his eyes, his hands clasped together, and made a fervent wish. "My wish this year is to successfully get a first-class commendation." Hearing the last 3 words, Seraphina Bellwether's eyebrows furrowed tightly, her face filled with shock. She wasn't expecting this. How could he get a first-class commendation if he had quit? Just as she was about to ask, her phone suddenly vibrated a few times. Seeing Dr. Roberts's name, her heart skipped a beat. She didn't even care about the risk of him noticing and answered immediately. "Ms. Bellwether, Mr. Johnson has woken up." The sentence exploded in Seraphina Bellwether's ears like a clap of thunder. She suddenly stood up, shoving her chair back. Without grabbing her coat or changing her shoes, she ran towards the door. Without a word, Sincere Clark, who had opened his eyes at the commotion, only saw her frantic retreating back. He didn't know what had happened. After a few seconds of hesitation, he grabbed his coat and chased after her anyway. Just as he reached downstairs, he saw Seraphina Bellwether speeding away, her foot heavy on the gas pedal, driving as if her life depended on it. The reckless speed scared Sincere Clark. Driven by his professional instinct to protect the public, he was afraid she might get hurt and quickly hailed a taxi to follow her. She drove west all the way to the hospital and headed straight for the 3rd floor after getting out. He rushed to catch up to the hospital room door. Barely catching his breath, he saw Seraphina Bellwether hugging someone and crying hysterically. Due to her profession, her emotions were usually tightly controlled. It was the first time Sincere Clark had seen her so agitated, and when the person in her arms looked up, revealing that clean-cut, handsome face, he froze on the spot. The assailant had told him that he and Ethan Johnson looked very much alike, especially in profile, as if they were cast from the same mold. It was only today, seeing it with his own eyes, that he realized it was true. After a moment of shock, a complex emotion rose in Sincere Clark's heart. He finally understood why she was so distraught. The person she had waited 5 years for had woken up. Chapter 3. Listening to the 2 people inside cry and speak of their mutual longing and 5 years of regret, Sincere Clark looked at the coat in his hand, a self-mocking smile playing on his lips. He took a deep breath, suppressing the surging emotions, and turned to leave the hospital. When he got home, he found that the candles he hadn't had time to blow out before leaving had burned down, leaving a burnt black patch on the white frosting. He got a trash can and dumped the food and cake from the table into it. Then he went back to the bedroom, turned off the light, and quietly finished his 27th birthday in the dark. For the next week, Seraphina Bellwether seemed to have vanished into thin air, with no news of her. Sincere Clark didn't try to contact her either. Alone at home, he slowly sorted through many things, taking them downstairs to dispose of them repeatedly, not minding the hassle. After clearing out the last cabinet, he looked at the much emptier apartment and pushed a cart downstairs. Because of the injury to his hand, it took him a lot of effort to throw the last bag of things into the trash can. Just as he finished, he was rubbing his wrist when he looked up and saw Seraphina Bellwether, looking preoccupied. Having not seen her for several days, Sincere Clark thought she would be very happy, especially since Ethan Johnson was awake. So, seeing her looking so troubled, he was a little confused at first. Perhaps noticing his gaze, Seraphina Bellwether also looked up and, seeing it was him, quickly walked towards him. "Why are you downstairs? What are you throwing away?" "Trash." Hearing this answer, she glanced sideways at the trash can and frowned when she saw the large bags inside. You have an injury on your hand. Why didn't you keep the trash and wait for me to handle it when I got back?" Sincere Clark smiled, placing his hand on the small cart beside him. "I had the cart. It wasn't heavy. Besides, you haven't been home the past few days. The trash couldn't be kept for too long." Seraphina Bellwether then remembered leaving unexpectedly on his birthday and being gone for days without a trace. A hint of panic flashed across her face, and she quickly made up an excuse. "Sincere, that day I received a call from a client saying there was danger. He was in another city, and I was worried something might happen to him, so I rushed there on a business trip. I'm sorry for worrying you." The lie she came up with on the spot was clumsy, but Sincere Clark didn't expose it. Instead, he gave her a way out. "Since you're back, did things get resolved smoothly?" Seraphina Bellwether looked at him, seemingly believing her, and was speechless for a moment. She had spent the past few days at the hospital, not going anywhere else, constantly taking care of Ethan Johnson. Because she knew how painful loss was when she had him back, she didn't want to waste a single moment. Her parents, boyfriend, work, and everything else had been cast to the back of her mind. Until this morning, Ethan Johnson presumably heard from friends about everything she had done for him over the years he was in a coma. Deeply moved, he finally broke the unspoken wall between them.
"Seraphina, I know you like me."
I've liked you for a long time, too. Will you be my girlfriend?" Seraphina Bellwether had waited almost 20 years for that sentence. But when she actually heard it, her heart wasn't as happy as she had imagined. Instead, another name popped into her head: Sincere Clark. Every shared moment from their 5 years together replayed in her mind like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. The kiss he gave her on her face on New Year's Eve, the scarf he knitted for her after staying up late several nights, the umbrella he delivered to her office during a typhoon. Scene after scene flashed by, and on each frame, the name Sincere Clark was ingrained. Finally, the image stopped on the day he was rescued and carried out, his bloody hands. In an instant, Seraphina Bellwether's heart felt like it had been brutally stabbed, a sharp, intricate pain spreading through her. She knew that because of her selfish motive, Sincere Clark could no longer achieve his dreams and ambitions. His life was completely ruined in her hands. Guilt, regret, and an unknown emotion furiously overwhelmed her heart, making it impossible for her to say yes. After some time, she finally calmed herself and replied to Ethan Johnson in a hoarse voice. "I'm sorry, I need some time to think." Ethan Johnson hadn't expected to be rejected. After all, everyone around them could see how much Seraphina Bellwether liked him. Seraphina Bellwether didn't know how to face him and made an excuse to leave the hospital. Seeing Sincere Clark now, her heart felt even more chaotic. Every lie she had told felt like a stone hitting her heart, making it hard to breathe. She hesitated for a long time, and finally spoke truthfully. "It will take some time." Looking at her eyes, Sincere Clark guessed she and Ethan Johnson had probably talked things through. Now the person she had waited for was awake, and he himself had also completely moved on. He didn't want to keep up this act anymore, so in a joking tone, he tentatively spoke the truth he held in his heart. "Seraphina Bellwether, how about we break up?" Chapter 4. Hearing the words "break up," Seraphina Bellwether's face immediately changed. She hugged him tightly, her voice rising several octaves. "Break up? I don't agree, Sincere. We're fine. Why are you suddenly bringing up breaking up?" Seeing her so flustered, Sincere Clark was surprised for the first time. The person she cared about was awake. He was offering to break up to let them be together. She should be very happy. Why that expression? An expression as if she were afraid of losing him. He didn't want to flatter himself. The only explanation was that although she liked Ethan Johnson because of her indirect actions, she had caused him to become crippled. Her deep guilt and self-blame were at work, making it impossible for her to leave him now. Sincere Clark originally intended to just tell her they were breaking up and end everything completely. But now, from her reaction, it seemed she wouldn't agree easily. On top of that, the undercover mission was top secret. He couldn't tip her off. It looked like he would have to break up secretly and then leave without her knowing. Hearing this, he smiled faintly, effortlessly smoothing things over. You seemed a little unhappy, so I wanted to make a joke to lighten the mood. Don't take it seriously. Seraphina Bellwether stared intently at his face, found no trace of lying, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. She proactively took the cart and led him upstairs. Don't ever make jokes like that again. I promise to take care of you for life. Hearing this, Sincere Clark looked at her sideways, many memories flashing through his mind. In the time after he first learned the truth, he had indeed been devastated for a long time. He started questioning if he was unworthy of love, questioning if fate was deliberately playing tricks on him. He resisted accepting the outcome of being crippled, drove away everyone around him, and locked himself in the hospital room, crying for a long time. But in the end, his long-cultivated ability for rational thinking overcame the desperate emotions. He repeatedly asked himself, as a criminal investigation officer, wasn't it his mission to apprehend murderers and protect the people? The answer was affirmative. His hand was crippled, but the murderer was also caught, and no one else would be harmed in the future. To be precise, he hadn't saved Seraphina Bellwether's loved one, but Ethan Johnson himself. This big boy, who should have been shining brightly on stage, had been lying in a hospital bed for 5 years. With the real culprit apprehended, wasn't this a form of comfort for the innocent victim? Realizing this, Sincere Clark completely let go of his emotional burden and never hated anyone again. So, upon hearing Seraphina Bellwether say this again, he let go of her hand, looked at her steadily, and solemnly shook his head. I don't need you to take care of me. From the day I reactivated my badge number, I was prepared to bleed and be injured. I am determined to dedicate everything I have, including my life, to the country. As long as the culprits receive their due punishment, any sacrifice is worth it. Although I can no longer be on the front lines, I will still pursue my beliefs in a different way. As things are, we should both look forward. After all, there will be new stories ahead. These were Sincere Clark's heartfelt words, and the last sentence was particularly significant. But Seraphina Bellwether, lost in guilt, didn't grasp their meaning. Instead, his serious and solemn demeanor, combined with her own hidden truth, plunged her into even greater self-recrimination. She didn't know what to say, so she could only use actions to compensate him. Thus, for the next week and a half, she barely left the house unless necessary, staying at home and taking care of Sincere Clark. She took on all the chores, thought of ways to cheer him up, accompanied him to his checkups, and sent many gifts, calling them birthday presents, occasionally. In a daze, seeing her so thoughtful, caring, and utterly gentle, Sincere Clark would almost believe the events of the past 2 months were just a dream. No kidnappers, no undercover mission, no Ethan Johnson. It was all just his hallucination. He could fulfill the vow he made at his parents' grave and live a simple life, growing old together with the person he loved. But as soon as he saw the scar on his hand, and then saw Seraphina Bellwether avoiding him to take calls on the balcony, in an instant he snapped back to reality. Chapter 5. On the day of the winter solstice, Sincere Clark woke up to hot dumplings and sweet soy milk. After eating, he sat on the sofa and opened his phone to see 2 new messages. One was a text message from his bank, notifying him of a deposit of $8 million USD. The other was a contact request on WhatsApp with the name Ethan Johnson. He frowned, accepted the request, and a few seconds later a message came through. Mr. Clark, thank you for taking care of Seraphina all these years, and thank you for helping us catch the culprit. Seraphina feels incredibly guilty about your injury. I contacted you today with no other intention except to compensate you by sending this money. Do you understand what I mean? Sincere Clark was surprised that Ethan Johnson knew about his injury, and even more surprised that he would contact him directly. He paused for a moment, about to reply, but seeing the $8 million USD, his face darkened. He was a public official. He absolutely couldn't touch that money. Ethan Johnson couldn't possibly be unaware of this. So, after careful consideration, he didn't transfer the money back immediately. Instead, he messaged Ethan Johnson proposing a meeting to discuss how to return the money. After setting the time and place, he saw Seraphina Bellwether working in the study and didn't want to disturb her, so he left by himself. When he arrived at the cafe, Ethan Johnson's face showed surprise upon seeing him. Sincere Clark nodded in acknowledgement and sat down without speaking. After a few minutes of silence, Ethan Johnson couldn't hold back and spoke first. But he didn't talk about the money. Instead, he reminisced about his past with Seraphina Bellwether. "Mr. Clark, I heard you've known Seraphina for 5 years. Do you know how long I've known her? As of this year, it's exactly 20 years. We liked each other from the moment we first met, and we were inseparable from kindergarten through high school and college. I love eating spicy food, so she found someone to teach her how to cook spicy dishes. Every New Year's Eve, I have to go to the amusement park to watch fireworks, and she always remembers. Every year for her birthday, I would go with her to the lake to watch fireworks. We've already arranged to go there next month. Will you join us? If you do, you can order a dress for her from Stride Reed. I introduced her to them. She really likes their craftsmanship." Listening to Ethan Johnson deliberately flaunting these things, Sincere Clark remained silent. The chili that was always on the dining table, the fixed date for New Year's Eve, the unchanging location for birthdays, and the unvarying answer of a dress from Stride Reed whenever he asked about gifts. Every single one of these things was actually something Ethan Johnson liked. All these years, from beginning to end, Seraphina Bellwether had only been using his face to reminisce about an old flame. Sincere Clark listened quietly, but he wasn't sad. Time had passed, and he had moved on. So he didn't interrupt at all, waiting quietly for Ethan Johnson to finish before pushing the bank card across the table. "Mr. Johnson, I won't accept this money. Please contact the bank to have it returned. Also, I know the real reason you invited me here today. You can rest assured about things between me and Seraphina Bellwether. It will be settled soon." Ethan Johnson had indeed come here today because he had investigated Seraphina Bellwether, finding a substitute during his coma years, and now, seeing her hesitate to agree to be with him because of the substitute, he felt frustrated. He deliberately came to provoke Sincere Clark, hoping he would withdraw voluntarily. But he hadn't expected things to go so smoothly, nor had he expected this reaction from Sincere Clark. Just as he was about to speak, the private room door was suddenly pushed open. Chapter 6. The instant he saw Seraphina Bellwether's face, he quickly and nervously put the card away. Sincere Clark also hadn't expected her to appear suddenly. As he was about to ask how she got there, Seraphina Bellwether stood in front of Ethan Johnson with a stern face, her gaze sharp as she looked at him, her tone icy. "Why do you know Ethan?" Her expression clearly showed she was terrified he might harm Ethan Johnson. His hand was crippled, yet all she cared about was protecting her first love. Sincere Clark chuckled mockingly, pulling his lips, and fabricated a lie without batting an eye. "I came out for a coffee and happened to bump into this gentleman. Because we look so alike, we just sat down and chatted for a bit." Ethan Johnson also didn't want her to find out about the $8 million USD and joined in covering things up. "Yes, I invited him over. I've never met anyone who looks so much like me." "Seraphina, you know this gentleman? Why don't you introduce us?" Seraphina Bellwether frowned. Seeing that both admitted they didn't know each other well, she sighed slightly in relief. She didn't want them to get acquainted, but she also knew a flat refusal would be suspicious. She could only proceed with introductions. "This is my childhood friend, Ethan Johnson. We grew up together." Hearing his name, Ethan Johnson smiled and extended a hand, saying it was a pleasure to meet him. "This is my friend, Sincere Clark." The words just came out, and Seraphina Bellwether hesitated, her voice trailing off. She paused for a long time, ultimately omitting the word boyfriend. Sincere Clark looked up and stared at her intently, but he said nothing, shifting his gaze to the hand offered before him, lightly shaking it. "Pleasure to meet you." All three implicitly understood and tacitly moved past what had just happened. Seraphina Bellwether was about to find an excuse to leave with Ethan Johnson, but Ethan Johnson smiled, put an arm around Sincere Clark's shoulder, acting as if they were old friends, and insisted on taking him to eat as it was getting close to dinner time. Seraphina Bellwether could never refuse him. With no other choice, she took both of them to a nearby restaurant. After finding a suitable table and sitting down, Ethan Johnson took off his sunglasses and hat, about to order, when a sudden commotion erupted beside them. Before he could react, a large crowd of fans surrounded them, shouting for autographs and photos. News of Ethan Johnson's awakening hadn't been officially released yet, but fans had gotten wind of it. Encountering him in a restaurant now naturally filled them with uncontrollable excitement, and they surged forward. "Quick, it's Ethan Johnson." "Ethan, I really like you. Please sign an autograph for me." "Sign mine first." "Sign mine first." In just a few minutes, the entire restaurant was packed, and a continuous stream of onlookers from downstairs tried to push their way up. Dinner was impossible. Ethan Johnson was so frightened by the crazed fans that it triggered his trauma, bringing back memories of being kidnapped. He was drenched in cold sweat, trembling uncontrollably. Seraphina Bellwether quickly and protectively shielded him, retreating into a private room, narrowly escaping the crowd. As if the memory of being kidnapped by a crazed fan resurfaced, Ethan Johnson buried his face in her shoulder, instantly sobbing uncontrollably. "Seraphina, I'm scared. I'm so scared." "Don't be scared. It's okay. I'll get you out of here right away." Seraphina Bellwether was frantic, thinking of several ways, but the way out was completely blocked, making assistance impossible. Seeing the crowd shouting Ethan Johnson's name, determined to see him today, she panicked. She clenched her fists, turning only to look at Sincere Clark. "Sincere, could you please swap clothes with Ethan and help distract these fans? He's not in a good state. I'm a bit worried." Chapter 7. Sincere Clark looked at her deeply, his eyes filled with complex emotions. Seraphina Bellwether knew her request was presumptuous and rude, her guilt growing heavier in her heart. She was about to offer an explanation when Sincere Clark had already taken off his coat and handed it over. Then he quickly grabbed Ethan Johnson's jacket, sunglasses, and hat, pushed the door open, and walked out. As soon as he closed the door, fans from all sides surged forward, shouting Ethan Johnson's name. To buy them time to leave, he couldn't deny it and couldn't be recognized. He could only pull his hat low, lower his head, and walk away quickly. But no matter how fast he walked, he was inevitably caught up by the fast-following fans before long. When he reached a small alley, a group of people grabbed him and cornered him. He lost his balance for a moment and fell into the crowd, his injured hand stepped on by several heavy people. These crazed fans didn't want to let him go and were squatting down, trying to snatch his hat and sunglasses, tearing his jacket. Finally, someone realized they had the wrong person, and everyone cursed and left. After everyone was gone, Sincere Clark supported himself with his left hand to stand up, staggering to his feet. Back home, he found the first aid kit in the cabinet and treated his injured hand by himself. Just as he had finished bandaging it, Seraphina Bellwether returned. She kept her head down, not daring to look at his face, her voice full of hesitation. Tonight, Sincere Clark didn't have the energy to listen to her explanations. He endured the pain, put on his jacket, and spoke flatly. "Today, no matter who it was, I would have done the same thing. My profession is to protect the people. For that, I can pay any price. So you don't need to explain and you don't need to apologize." Seraphina Bellwether's intuition told her that his words were somehow wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what was off and could only temporarily put it aside, wanting to ask about his physical condition. But before she could speak, Sincere Clark interrupted her. "Is Mr. Johnson all right?" "He's fine, just a bit startled." Saying this, she seemed to remember something, and her previously relaxed brows furrowed again. "Ethan has been through some bad things in the past and has some psychological trauma. He was really scared today, and I'm a bit worried about him. I should go check on him again. Get some rest early, don't wait up for me." She spoke quickly as she rushed out the door, not noticing the blood-stained cotton swabs in the trash can. She also forgot to check on Sincere Clark. Seraphina Bellwether was gone for 4 or 5 days after that. But through social media feeds, Sincere Clark could clearly see her whereabouts. She accompanied Ethan Johnson back to school for a class reunion, shielding him from drinks, watched the most brilliant sunset, by the seaside with him, made pottery together. The camera lens in every photo was pointed at Seraphina Bellwether. Her gaze always rested on Ethan Johnson. The camera captured the moment she looked at him, her eyes full of tenderness and deep affection. Sincere Clark scrolled with his fingertip, flipping through the photos one by one, slowly remembering many past events. In the past, when he and Seraphina Bellwether were together, she would also often look at him sideways. Every time he turned his head, he could catch a glimpse of a peculiar emotion in her clear, bright eyes. It wasn't intimacy or love, nor was it focus or tenderness. It was nostalgia, as if she was looking through him, seeing someone else. Thankfully, from now on, she wouldn't have to dwell in the past anymore. Thinking this, Sincere Clark gently smiled. He was about to close his phone when a message suddenly popped up from Captain Hayes. Undercover operation officially starts on December 29th. Sincere Clark's face instantly became solemn and serious. He looked up at the wall calendar on the desk, his gaze fixed on the 29th, and murmured, "Only 3 days left." Chapter 8. Click, the door opened. Seraphina Bellwether walked in with a chill about her, smiling and talking to him as she took off her shoes. 3 days? What's only 3 days left? Sincere Clark shook his head slightly, changing the subject. Nothing. Heard it's going to snow in 3 days. Seraphina Bellwether looked out the window at the sky, chatted with him for a bit, and then went into the study. Listening to the sounds of her video conference from inside, Sincere Clark silently rose, pushed the things he had cleared out in the past few days downstairs, breaking and discarding them, one by one. When he returned, Seraphina Bellwether had finished her meeting and was frowning as she rummaged through a cabinet. Hearing the door open, she looked up at him. "Sincere, where did the photos we took before go? And the scarf and gloves you knitted for me, where did you put them?" Sincere Clark paused his steps, lowered his head, and answered her in a low voice. The cabinet was too damp. The photos got distorted without the protective film. I sent them for restoration. The scarf and gloves also got moldy. I threw them all away. Seraphina Bellwether nodded thoughtfully, but some images suddenly flashed through her mind. She had put those photos in the album herself. She remembered putting on the protective film. Could she have been mistaken? Just as she was about to ask, her phone on the desk rang a few times. She picked it up casually and opened the message. The next second, what she had been about to ask was forgotten. That night, the winter wind howled outside the window, but beside her ears she heard faint, prolonged breathing. In the dim night light, Sincere Clark turned to look at Seraphina Bellwether's tightly closed eyes, then took her phone from under her pillow. As soon as he entered the password, the chat interface with Ethan Johnson popped up. Sincere Clark scrolled through the chat history, seeing her sharing every little detail of her daily life with Ethan Johnson, seeing her immediately agreeing to all his requests, seeing her also carefully admitting mistakes. A hint of understanding gleamed in his eyes. So this was how she was when she liked someone. Sincere Clark didn't scroll up further, pressed the back button, and immediately saw the 2 pinned chats at the top. One was Ethan Johnson, the other was him. He glanced at her, then long pressed his own profile picture and unpinned it. Then he clicked into it, went to the profile settings page, and pressed the delete button. Soon he would completely disappear from her world. Everything related to him should also be deleted. He slept well that night. When he woke up the next morning, the spot beside him was empty. He changed into black clothes, took his umbrella, and was about to leave. Just as he reached the door, he met Seraphina Bellwether returning with breakfast. "Such heavy rain. Where are you going?" Seeing no unusual expression on her face, Sincere Clark knew she hadn't noticed that he had unpinned their chat and blocked her. Well, her mind was completely focused on Ethan Johnson now, so how could she notice such insignificant things? He replied softly, "To the cemetery, to see Mom and Dad." Seraphina Bellwether froze. Today wasn't Memorial Day or the Hungry Ghost Festival, nor was it a birthday or death-anniversary. Why would he suddenly go to the cemetery? She thought for a moment, still a little uneasy, put down the breakfast and went out with him. "Sincere, I'll go with you." Chapter 9. At the flower shop, Sincere Clark was paying for his chrysanthemums. Seraphina Bellwether, waiting beside him, received a call from Ethan Johnson. "Seraphina, where are you? Why aren't you at my birthday party yet?" Seraphina Bellwether checked her watch. It was only 10 o'clock. She softened her voice. "I'll come later." Ethan Johnson on the other end wouldn't relent and insisted she come right away. Seraphina Bellwether knew that if she refused again he would get angry, but she was planning to accompany Sincere Clark to visit his parents' graves, so she hesitated for a moment. Sincere Clark looked up at the sound, seeing her troubled look, and kindly gave her an out. "If you have something to do, you can go ahead." Seraphina Bellwether didn't notice his indifferent demeanor and didn't decline. She opened her umbrella and saw him off in a taxi. "Go and come back soon. Take care with the umbrella, don't catch a cold." After seeing him nod in agreement, she turned and left. Half an hour later, the taxi reached its destination. Sincere Clark paid the fare, holding the umbrella in one hand and the flowers in the other, and walked steadily towards the deeper part of the cemetery. Looking at the long list of commendations on the martyr's tombstone, Sincere Clark silently placed the flowers and raised his scarred right hand in a salute. He just wanted to see his parents one last time before he left. He hadn't prepared any words, because he knew they would understand his choice, just as he had never resented their choice. On the way back, he opened the birthday video Ethan Johnson had just sent. In a hall decorated with flowers and balloons he appeared, wearing a well-tailored custom suit, receiving countless well wishes. Seraphina Bellwether smiled as she handed him the bouquet of roses, then raised her hand and affectionately adjusted his tie. Around them, many voices rose in excited cheers, saying they were truly a match made in heaven. Sincere Clark watched the 5-minute video the entire way. It wasn't until the driver reminded him they had arrived that he suddenly snapped awake, closed his phone, and returned alone to the cold and empty apartment. Seraphina Bellwether stayed out the entire night. When he woke up again, Sincere Clark looked at the December 29th date on the screen, silently got up and destroyed everything related to himself. By the evening, he looked around the empty apartment, returned to the bedroom, and closed the box. As he was preparing to leave, a call suddenly came in. "Sincere Seraphina Bellwether is having dinner with us, and she's drunk. Is it convenient for you to come pick her up?" Captain Hayes hadn't messaged him yet, so there was still time. Sincere Clark made the trip. He helped the unconscious Seraphina Bellwether home and got her onto the sofa, but she clung to him, refusing to let go, her face contorted, her voice sounding pained. "Ethan, my stomach hurts." After a few seconds of silence, Sincere Clark was about to call 911 when Captain Hayes' message came through. "Undercover operation starting now." Looking at Seraphina Bellwether, curled up in pain and drenched in sweat, Sincere Clark thought for a few seconds and sent a message to Ethan Johnson. "I'm leaving Kyoto immediately. Seraphina Bellwether is drunk. Come take care of her." Ethan Johnson didn't reply, but 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Sincere Clark replied, received to Captain Hayes, placed the breakup letter he had printed earlier on the bedside table, pushed his suitcase to the door, and opened it. The two men exchanged glances, but didn't speak. As they passed each other, Sincere Clark heard Seraphina Bellwether on the sofa suddenly call out Sincere. He was surprised she would call out his name. He didn't understand her intention, but he didn't look at her, and he didn't turn back. "Seraphina Bellwether, this time I'm giving you back completely to Ethan Johnson, and I am dedicating my life to the country." A faint smile curved the corner of his mouth, and he gently pushed. Bang, the door closed. Chapter 10. When Seraphina Bellwether woke up, she found herself in the hospital. Due to her hangover, her head felt groggy, and her voice was particularly hoarse.
How did I get here?
Ethan Johnson, sitting beside her, heard her voice, saw she was awake, quickly leaned down to help her sit up and offered her a glass of warm water, his tone tinged with reproach.
You're asking me? Why did you drink so much?
If I hadn't brought you to the hospital yesterday, you would probably have thrown up until you passed out. Seraphina Bellwether drank the water, finally clearing her head a bit. She looked at Ethan Johnson's slightly unhappy face, vague memories flashing through her mind. She remembered going home last night. Wasn't it supposed to be Sincere Clark who brought her to the hospital? She thought for a long time but couldn't figure out what had happened, so she tentatively asked, "Yesterday, did you come to my place?" Ethan Johnson realized he had let something slip and froze on the spot, not knowing how to cover it up. Seeing his silence, Seraphina Bellwether's heart skipped a beat, and her face turned incredibly pale. She grabbed his hand, her voice filled with panic. "Ethan, listen to me explain. Sincere and I—" Ethan Johnson knew what she was about to say. But because he saw that breakup letter at her place yesterday, he knew Sincere Clark wouldn't be coming back. His underlying worry had completely vanished. So looking at her nervous appearance now, he felt a little heartache and interrupted her, telling her everything.
I know. You got together with Sincere Clark to help me catch the culprit.
He was injured and his future is ruined for life. You feel very guilty, which is why you never brought up breaking up. I already knew all this before I was discharged from the hospital. Hearing this, Seraphina Bellwether's mind went blank. She thought she had hidden it well, but she hadn't expected him to have known for so long. Ethan Johnson's tone didn't carry any blame, but this made her even more panicked. Many things came rushing back. She gripped the bedsheet tightly, her eyes filled with guilt and regret, speaking incoherently non-stop. "It's my fault. It's all my fault. If I had taken you to the airport that day, you wouldn't have been harmed. Then Sincere wouldn't have met me, wouldn't have been injured. I'm sorry for what I did to both of you." Seeing her on the verge of collapse from self-blame, Ethan Johnson felt his heart ache as if being torn apart. He had known Seraphina Bellwether for so many years, and knew that when it came to him, she would take all the blame upon herself. He also knew Sincere Clark was innocent, but what had happened. No amount of regret was going to change it. That's why he wanted to compensate Sincere Clark with money. He couldn't be a criminal investigator anymore, but with that money, he would at least be well off for the rest of his life. But Sincere Clark had refused his compensation and now had left all alone. Ethan Johnson felt just as bad inside, but saw no other way. He also loved Seraphina Bellwether for many years and had nearly spent the rest of his life unaware in a hospital bed. Waking up again, he felt it was a miracle, sheer luck at being given another chance at life, so he couldn't bear to lose Seraphina Bellwether again. But if she couldn't let go of the past and remained mired in guilt, how could they spend the rest of their lives together? Thinking this, Ethan Johnson's chaotic heart suddenly grew firm. He took out the letter from his bag and handed it to Seraphina Bellwether. "Seraphina, Detective Clark actually knows about all this too. Our last meeting wasn't a coincidence. He asked me out to talk things over properly. He left yesterday. This is the letter he left for you. Take a look." These words fell on Seraphina Bellwether's ears like bombs, leaving her completely frozen. Her pupils widened to their maximum, her shoulders trembled uncontrollably, and she was enveloped in a chilling sense of cold. She seemed numb, like a robot, taking the envelope and slowly opening it. The neatly printed text on the white paper met her eyes. Chapter 11. Seraphina Bellwether, by the time you read this letter, I will have already left Kyoto. There are some things I actually wanted to tell you in person, but you haven't really returned for so long, so I can only inform you by letter. The first thing is that I want to inform you I have decided to break up. You might ask why. Actually, the reason is very simple. The person you love has never been me, and I no longer love you now. So there is no need for us to remain entangled. Let's both move forward. Go pursue the one your heart desires, and I wish you the fulfillment of your wishes and a happy life. The second thing is, don't look for me, and don't try to inquire about my whereabouts. I am starting a new life. This is a new path I have chosen for myself after careful consideration. There will be different scenery on this path and an uncertain future, but it is where my heart is headed. As for our story, it is completely over. Please, don't disturb me again. The third thing is, regarding those 2 kidnapping cases, I actually found out about them 2 months ago. At that time, I really couldn't accept the reality, but I have worn the police uniform for 6 years. I know clearly that this world is not a fairy tale of pure goodness and beauty, but an arena where black, white, and gray are intertwined. Good and evil, sincerity and deceit, calculation and utilization are actually happening every moment. I understand that you didn't intentionally want to harm me and can understand your stance. And as a police officer, I also have my stance. Capturing culprits, upholding justice, and protecting human safety are the missions on my shoulders. I will not shrink away from pain and injury, nor will I resent being used in some way, because I know that there can be shadows under the sun, but what shines upon me is always the hot and warm sunlight. You need not feel guilty, because in my heart, I didn't lose my right hand because of you. But for fairness and justice, I caught the culprit who had harmed people, and I protected the victim. You were just someone who happened to intersect with them. Your initial intention was only to get justice for Ethan Johnson. I can recognize this point, can't you? The last thing is, I want to tell you that I have never hated you. Not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Sincere Clark, written in Kyoto on December 29th. From the moment she saw the first sentence, Seraphina Bellwether's tears couldn't stop flowing. By the time she reached the last word, tears had completely soaked the entire letter. Suppressed and desperate sobs escaped from her lips, teeth, and throat, echoing throughout the hospital room. She felt as if her chest had been torn apart, a fierce pain traveling along her nerves to her brain, slowly engulfing her consciousness. She held the damp letter paper against her chest, curling up into a ball, her fingers digging into her flesh. Blood seeped out, mixing with tears, blurring the words on the paper. Seeing her in such agony, Ethan Johnson couldn't help but cry himself. He took her hand, wanting to stop her from harming herself, but couldn't pull it away. Seeing the wound deepen, he too lost control and screamed out. It's over, he's let go. Why are you still tormenting yourself? He never hated you. Just think of the past as a dream, and now the dream is over. Let's look forward, okay? Seraphina Bellwether desperately wanted to listen to him, to forget everything. But she knew clearly that everything had truly happened. It wasn't a dream. The knife the culprit plunged into Sincere Clark's hand had also been plunged into her heart. The wound might heal, but the scar would remain forever, etched into her bone and heart, unforgettable for eternity. Now that Sincere Clark had left, she no longer had a chance to repent or apologize. That apology she never got a chance to say. It would become a shadow lingering in her heart, impossible to forget until her death. Chapter 12. By late February, the weather in Shanghai was slowly warming up. Chi woke up around noon, disturbed by knocking on the door. He grumbled as he got up, shuffled to the door in his slippers, a look of impatience on his face as he opened it. Seeing Wallace Miller, he stuck out his leg and kicked him in the knee. What's with all the early knocking? Possessed or something? Say what you need to say and stop disturbing my sleep. Before boarding the ship, Wallace Miller had heard that he was gambling at the casino until midnight yesterday. Seeing he wasn't happy, he quickly put on an ingratiating smile and, like offering a treasure, handed over a carton of cigarettes he had bought on the way. No big deal, or I wouldn't dare disturb Brother Chi's sleep. Mr. K sent me. He said there's a big fish in 7 days and you need to get ready early. Chi's hand paused as he was opening the cigarette pack. He raised an eyebrow. A big fish? How big? Wallace Miller glanced outside the door and made a gesture with 6 fingers. Chi clicked his tongue twice, tossed him a pack of cigarettes, and then picked up a lighter to light one for himself. What kind of fish? A basketful, a crateful, or a killer whale? Wallace Miller grinned as he opened his cigarettes, offered him one, and then attentively lit it for him. I heard this time it's a mermaid. Some big boss on the other side specifically requested this one. We absolutely have to deliver. Chi squinted his eyes and took a couple of drags. He nodded. Wallace Miller didn't bother him anymore and slipped away quickly. He kicked the door shut with his foot, walked to the table and sat down, placing the cigarette on the edge. Then he poured half the water out of his cup, dipped his fingertip in, and drew some watermarks on the table. A mermaid? That means someone with a good face. Paying $60 million USD to kidnap someone means this person must be difficult to deal with. Someone who has no power to pose a threat, yet is famous enough to be known by the gang on the other side of the border. It could only be a celebrity. 60 million USD is based on a likely original 60 million yuan. Conversion rate varies, but implies a significant value as Ethan is a famous star. Thinking this, a sense of heaviness settled in Chi's heart. He pricked up his ears to listen for any movement outside, then pulled out a pack of cigarettes, picked up the pen from the table, and wrote a line inside the paper box. The pen had been left without a cap for too long and wasn't writing. He flicked it, lost control of the force for a moment, and aggravated his injury. A burning pain shot through his hand. He gasped, grimaced, and took a long time to recover before picking up the pen again. 7 days the mermaid enters the sea. After writing, he tucked the cigarettes into his pocket and went back to bed, pulled the blanket over his head, and fell asleep. When he woke up again, it was already dark. He got up and wandered to the kitchen. It was past dinner time, and all the food had been eaten, leaving only scraps. He cursed the little brats a few times, turned around and walked towards the bow of the ship. As he descended the ladder, he ran into a few of the guys below who greeted him and asked where he was going. He glared at them a few times, then cursed with a laugh. A bunch of thoughtless, hungry devils, you don't even save any food for me when you eat. I really wasted my time taking care of you guys. Hearing this, the guys scratched their heads and chuckled, quickly stepping forward to help set up the ladder. Chi didn't hesitate, took out his cigarette pack, grabbed a handful, and tossed them to them. Then he strolled leisurely towards the small restaurant in the village. It was 8 o'clock. There weren't many people in the restaurant. He ordered a plate of egg-fried rice, then opened his cigarette pack, took out the last cigarette, lit it, and casually threw the box into the overflowing trash can. 5 or 6 minutes later, the owner brought the food. She casually grabbed the trash bag and put a new one in. Chi ate with his head down, not looking at the landlady. He quickly polished off the rice on the plate, belched, and walked to the counter, tossing a crumpled $100 bill down. The landlady rummaged in the drawer for a long time before finally finding $90 in change to give him. He took it, picking his teeth, and kicked at small stones on the ground as he walked back towards the boat. Just as he got onto the deck, he ran into Arthur Davis. Arthur got up and offered his chair to Chi, his tone full of ingratiating eagerness. "Brother Chi, not trying your luck tonight?" Chapter 13. Chi sprawled out lazily and stretched. "Lost too much, where would I get money?" Waiting for the big fish to be delivered from above, this implied he barely had money left even for food. Arthur's eyes darted around. He quickly took out $2,000 from his pocket and handed it over. Chi looked at him sideways, not reaching out to take it. "What's this?" "Showing my respect, old man. Don't mind it, it's just cigarette money." Not much. A smile spread across Chi's face. Only then did he take the money, stand up, and pat him on the shoulder. "You're a sensible kid. Next time there's a fish, I'll let you handle the pickup." Arthur's face lit up with joy. He quickly picked up a lamp and went ahead to light the way for him. Back in his room, Chi locked the door, took out the loose change from his pocket, and found a note among it. He looked at it under the lamp for a long time, memorizing the words on the note. Then he crumpled the paper ball, put it in his mouth and chewed it, grimacing, and swallowed it with water. He blew out the lamp. Before long he heard the sounds of men joking and chatting outside the window. He softly walked to the window, opened a tiny crack, and listened to the activity outside. "Heard a big fish is coming. How much meat do you think we'll get?" Even a fish head. With Big Wall and Brother Chi around, you think they'd let you have the fish head? You're dreaming again. Brother Chi's only been here a month, and he gets to eat the fish head meat? We've been here for half a year and can't even get a fish eye. That's just unfair. What's your status? What's Brother Chi's status? You don't even dare to kill a fish. Let Brother Chi hear that, and watch out, you might end up in a fish basket hearing them talking about him behind his back. Chi, no, Sincere Clark, smiled silently. He returned to bed and lay down fully dressed, many memories flashing through his mind. After leaving Kyoto in late December, he arrived in Shanghai and received half a month of training. During this half-month, he learned of his undercover identity and mission and memorized information about the criminal group. The Hunter Seagull Plan was an anti-crime operation launched on the China-Suinan border, targeting the criminal syndicate led by Mr. K. This syndicate had long colluded with the gangs on the other side of the sea in Suinan, profiting from organ trafficking and operating numerous casinos, involved in multiple illegal activities such as kidnapping and trafficking. And this Chize, whom Sincere Clark was impersonating, was the son of a henchman under the previous boss of this gang. This henchman was responsible for operating the transport boat, but he owed high-interest debts from gambling and was cornered at home. His son, Chize, poisoned the water, killing several debt collectors who came to demand repayment. He was arrested and imprisoned for over 10 years. The henchman died a few years ago trying to save Mr. K, still muttering about his son before he died. A year ago, Chize got into a conflict in prison, had an accident, and died. The police kept this information secret, preserving the identity of Chize and using it to formulate the Hunter Seagull operation. Sincere Clark, who had a recent hand injury, was of a similar age and had grown up as an orphan after losing both parents at a young age, fit this character perfectly in every aspect. He also lived up to expectations, passing the training tests and successfully infiltrating the criminal syndicate in mid-January. After spending half a month at the headquarters, he gained Mr. K's trust, inherited Chize's father's boat, and became the boat captain. Throughout February, he completed 3 secret missions transporting organs across the border, all successfully executed, which earned him the trust of everyone on the boat. However, his identity was still that of a young man in his early 20s. Although everyone was polite to him on the surface, privately, many still held grudges. Sincere Clark knew many eyes were watching him from behind, so he dared not make any unusual moves. Today was the first time he had sent intelligence to his contact. If successful, he should be able to save a life. Sincere Clark, however, couldn't be happy. He was filled with anxiety. He was afraid something unexpected would happen and that he would be exposed, causing the entire plan to fall through, endangering the lives of the other 2 colleagues undercover with him. But fortunately, everything was developing in the direction they had previously simulated. The waves were high, but he couldn't dock, because a mermaid was about to become food for the seagull's sharp claws. He had to save this fish. Chapter 14. 2 months after Sincere Clark left Kyoto, Seraphina Bellwether still hadn't given up searching for him. She went to the Criminal Investigation Division, where colleagues said he had quit and didn't know where he went. She also used connections to check all sorts of air and sea transportation systems, all of which reported no record of a passenger named Sincere Clark. Besides colleagues, he didn't connect with people outside, so there were no close friends she could inquire with, and his immediate family members had all passed away, making it impossible to ask. Seraphina Bellwether had gone to every place she could think of, but still hadn't found any news about him. After a long time being alone in the empty apartment, she felt somewhat disoriented, starting to doubt whether Sincere Clark even existed in this world. How else could a living, breathing person just vanish into thin air without a trace? She raised her sunken, bloodshot eyes, wandering through each room, trying to find something related to him. But after turning over every cabinet, box, pocket, and corner, she couldn't even find a single strand of hair. All the remaining things in the 4 rooms of the apartment were her personal belongings. Everything related to Sincere Clark had disappeared, except for the letter on the bedside table. She picked up the crumpled envelope, driving away the slight suspicion in her mind, comforting herself inwardly. He must have cleared out the things at home. He was a criminal investigator. Destroying these things would be easy for him. Implied from his professional background, not stated in the text itself here, but understandable. He must still be in Kyoto, just hiding somewhere. Maybe one day they would run into each other on a street corner. As she kept telling herself this, her confidence slowly grew. She picked up her phone and went out, ready to go looking for him. Kyoto in February was still very cold. Seraphina Bellwether walked alone on the streets for a long time, but still found nothing. In the past 2 months, she hadn't been eating or sleeping well, losing a lot of weight. Her physical condition wasn't what it used to be, and by the time evening fell, she was too tired to lift her feet. She sat leaning against the flower bed in the square, her head spinning, gulping down water. After only a few sips, her gaze fell on the large screen in the center of the square. A press conference was being broadcast on the screen. Looking at the familiar smiling face on the screen, Seraphina Bellwether froze on the spot. Perhaps she was faint from hunger, or perhaps it was the angle, but for a moment, she had mistaken the person on the screen for Sincere Clark. It wasn't until she saw the scrolling text below, first-line star Ethan Johnson announces comeback press conference broadcasting live, that she snapped back to reality, lowered her head silently, not daring to look anymore. But Ethan Johnson's voice still reached her ears through the speakers overhead. Actually, I had planned to announce some very important news at this press conference, but something unexpected happened, so I can only inform everyone later. Recalling the message she had received last night, hearing his voice full of regret, she felt a mix of emotions inside. After Sincere Clark disappeared, Seraphina Bellwether became obsessed, her mind focused only on finding him. At first, Ethan Johnson would accompany her in her search, but after a while he grew tired. He had an argument with her and left. She still remembered him crying heartbrokenly, questioning her, asking why she couldn't let go, asking if she had fallen for Sincere Clark instead. Seraphina Bellwether didn't know how to answer him, because even she herself didn't know what her feelings for Sincere Clark truly were. In the past, she also thought she was just using him as a substitute for Ethan Johnson, reminiscing. But after he completely lost contact, she suddenly realized that he had already become an indispensable part of her life, as important as Ethan Johnson. Chapter 15. So, yesterday, when Ethan Johnson proactively reached out to make amends and hinted that if she were willing, he would announce their relationship at tomorrow's press conference, Seraphina Bellwether refused him for the first time. The last time at the hospital, she had said she needed time to think, and now she had made up her mind. She couldn't agree to be with him, couldn't let go of the past and pretend nothing had happened. Ethan Johnson had spent these 5 years in a coma, so he hadn't changed at all. But she was no longer the same person she had been 5 years ago. She had clear-headedly designed a trap, using the name of love, and dragged the innocent Sincere Clark into it. She was too arrogant, too overconfident, believing everything was within her control, thinking she could ensure his complete safety. But she forgot that while she was plotting all this, the perpetrator who had planned 2 kidnappings might also be observing her from the shadows. In the 3 days Sincere Clark disappeared, she completely broke down. She was at a point where any news of his misfortune would lead her to commit suicide. Fortunately, fate gave her a chance for redemption. Sincere Clark didn't die, but his hand was crippled. The hand that he would raise every year before his parents' tombstone, promising to receive a first-class commendation. It was crippled because of her. She was a coward, lacking the courage and nerve to see him by his hospital bed. She didn't know how he would feel if he learned the truth, nor how he would look at her when they met again. She suffered immensely while waiting outside his hospital room for half a month, but never dared to push open that door. In the end, it was Sincere Clark who proactively opened the door and walked out. He looked at her with calm, expressionless eyes and asked where she had been all these days. Her boyfriend was injured, and she hadn't even come to take care of him? It turned out he didn't know the truth. Realizing this, Seraphina Bellwether felt as if she had just been released from the gallows, breaking out in a cold sweat. It was from that moment on that she vowed to stay by his side for a lifetime, to atone for her sins. She thought she could keep that promise, but hadn't expected Ethan Johnson to wake up. The turn of events had once again spiraled out of her control, and while she was still feeling conflicted, Sincere Clark left. After seeing the letter he left behind, Seraphina Bellwether finally understood that as early as 5 years ago, when she first contemplated using him, her story with Ethan Johnson had already ended. She had betrayed his genuine feelings, and she ought to pay for it with her entire life. Either die or return to Sincere Clark's side. Other than this, there was no third option. Whenever she thought back on these past events, Seraphina Bellwether would get lost in them, unable to extricate herself. So by the time she snapped back to reality, the live broadcast on the screen had ended. She stood up, her body weak, hailed a taxi, and was about to give the address when Ethan Johnson's call suddenly came in. After hesitating for a moment, she answered it. "Seraphina, please don't refuse me anymore. Can we talk? I'm waiting for you at our old spot. If you don't come, I'll wait for you here all night. I mean it." He quickly said these few sentences, didn't give her a chance to reply, and hung up directly. Seraphina Bellwether's head suddenly started to ache. She pressed her temples and thought for a long time, ultimately deciding to go. Half an hour later, the taxi stopped outside a villa halfway up the mountain. She didn't knock, sent his location to him, and waited outside the gate. Chapter 16. A few minutes later, the mountain villa's gate opened. Ethan Johnson jogged all the way across the road to her side, his face full of a happy smile. "I knew you wouldn't ignore me." A car drove down from the mountain, winding along the mountain road. Seraphina Bellwether stepped back a few paces, putting distance between them. Her eyes were still filled with sadness. "This is the last time. There won't be any future. Ethan, after today, let's not see each other again." Hearing this, the smile on Ethan Johnson's face slowly faded, replaced by panic. "Seraphina, what are you talking about? Didn't you used to like me the most?" I finally woke up. "How can you say something like that? What I'm saying is from my heart. Ethan, I used to like you very much, but you said it yourself. That was in the past. You are still the same you, but I'm not the same me I was before. I can't keep my promise anymore. Forget about me. Dance happily, live well." After speaking, Seraphina Bellwether didn't look at him again and turned directly away. Ethan Johnson watched her in disbelief, followed her and grabbed her hand, still trying to keep her. But she didn't show any mercy, shaking him off directly and slowly walking down the mountain. Looking at his empty hand, Ethan Johnson froze on the spot, tears welling up profusely. Neither of them noticed that the car descending from the mountain was slowing down. Finally, it stopped directly as it passed Ethan Johnson. Bang, the door opened with a heavy sound. 3 people immediately jumped out of the car and dragged Ethan Johnson towards it. A scream echoed, breaking the silence that had just settled. Seraphina Bellwether turned around at the sound, and her mind exploded the moment she saw 3 masked men pulling Ethan Johnson into the car. She surged forward, grabbing the corner of Ethan Johnson's clothes, clutching it tightly. An assailant beside her cursed a few times, then rushed forward and kicked her. She stumbled to the ground, left with only torn scraps of clothing in her hand. In desperation, she immediately threw her arms around the leg of one of the assailants beside her. At the same time, the villa gate opened, and over a dozen bodyguards rushed out. Seeing that things were going badly, the 3 assailants exchanged glances, pushed Ethan Johnson to the side of the road directly, and tried to get into the car to escape. Seraphina Bellwether, however, absolutely refused to let go, holding on to the assailant's leg with all her might. Seeing the bodyguards were only 4 or 5 meters away, in a rush, the 3 assailants simply lifted her into the car. Then they slammed the door shut and floored the gas pedal. Seraphina Bellwether seemed to have lost her mind, her fingers digging in, making the assailant she held on to scream in pain. The assailant beside her, seeing she still wouldn't calm down, also hardened his heart, grabbed a stick from the car and slammed it down on the back of her head. After a muffled grunt, Seraphina Bellwether lost consciousness. Blood flowed profusely from the back of her head, quickly soaking the assailant's pants. The assailant driving heard the sound, looked back and spoke with a bad temper. "Didn't kill her, did we?" The two assailants in the back seat looked at each other, not daring to speak. The silence made the assailant in the front seat sigh heavily. He slammed the steering wheel several times, his voice filled with the desperate harshness of someone who had given up trying to be careful. "Bungling the job and tipping off the police, we can't take the blame for this. We'll pin it on this woman." The two assailants, upon hearing this, also chimed in. "I think so. If she hadn't messed things up, we would have succeeded already. I want to see how much her heart and liver are worth, if it, really 60 million." Chapter 17. The day before the boat was due to sail, Wallace Miller showed up on the ship again with several packs of betel nuts.
Kai was lying on the deck sunbathing.
Seeing him come, he quickly motioned for someone to bring a chair over. Well, a rare guest. How come you have time to visit me today?" Wallace Miller's face was sour. He waved a hand and sat down. "Don't remind me, Brother Chi, that fish we had in the net. It got away." Chi bolted upright, pulled off his sunglasses, revealing wide, shocked eyes. "Got away? That was 60 million USD. It just got away like that?" "I was hoping to get a cut to pay off my gambling debts. Bunch of failures. Couldn't even keep hold of a sissy. Mr. K is furious too. That's why he sent me to tell you. The money they were counting on was gone. Neither of them was happy." They didn't talk for long before Wallace Miller left. Chi picked up a fishing rod, walked to the edge of the sea, hooked bait, and cast the line. He sat for a long time but didn't catch a single fish. Two teenagers, 16 or 17, watched from the beach for a while and then hollered, "Brother Chi, catch anything?" Catch my SS, hearing that the guys on the boat knew he was in a bad mood and quickly offered comfort. "It's okay, Brother Chi. The fish will bite eventually. Just wait a little longer." The kids below burst into laughter. Chi glared at them, took off his slipper and threw it at them. The two ran off, laughing, and gradually disappeared from sight. Chi lost his mood, dropped the fishing rod, and went back to his room to sleep. He slept until 1 in the morning the next day. He opened his eyes, listened to the sound of the waves outside the window, and sat up, wrapped in the blanket. Although he didn't know why the mermaid hadn't taken the bait, the latest intelligence had been sent out. The rescue operation would be canceled, and no innocent people would be harmed. Thinking this, his heart finally settled somewhat. The next day the boat wasn't sailing, so Wallace Miller came over again. "Brother, pack your things. Get ready to sail." Hearing this, Chi's heart suddenly skipped a beat, but he maintained his composure, squinting at him, cursing him with a laugh. "The fish is gone and you still want to sail? Are you messing with me, kid?" Wallace Miller squatted beside him, chuckled a few times, lowering his voice. The big fish got away, but 2 small fish showed up, enough to chew on. Chi's hand hidden in his sleeve clenched tightly into a fist. He spoke indirectly, trying to pry for information. "Small fish? 2 of them? What's their story? How much are they worth?" Wallace Miller scratched his head, took out his phone, tapped the screen a few times and held it up to Chi's eyes. "This kid is the big fish we were supposed to catch. I heard they caught him, but a chick messed things up. The guys downstairs were afraid they couldn't report back, so they grabbed this chick to take the blame. Mr. K said to send her to the other side along with some punk who caused trouble earlier. Get moving, they're coming up from below right now, looking at the familiar face on the phone." Chi bit his teeth tightly to control his facial expression. Only now, through this photo, did he realize that the mermaid Wallace Miller was talking about was Ethan Johnson. And the woman who was caught, a bad premonition suddenly rose in his heart. He pushed himself up on the chair, about to stand. Just as he rose, a few of the guys brought 2 people onto the boat who had been beaten and were bruised and swollen. The moment he saw the woman leading the 2, Chi felt his blood freeze, his mind blank. At the same time, the woman also raised her blood-stained face. Those tired, weathered eyes suddenly widened upon seeing him, almost popping out of their sockets. She shrieked hoarsely, Sincere, how did you? Chapter 18. Before she could finish her sentence, Chi lifted his knee and kicked her jaw several times. The guys around him froze at his actions. Wallace Miller stared at him in surprise. Brother Chi, what are you doing? Chi's mind raced. He stared grimly into the distance, his voice laced with ruthlessness. Lots of unfamiliar faces around lately, probably keeping an eye on us. This woman can't keep her mouth shut, she's trouble. Hearing this, the guys turned their heads to look into the distance and indeed saw several unfamiliar boats. They quickly grabbed a piece of cloth and stuffed it into her mouth. Wallace Miller nodded in agreement, waving his hand for the guys below to quickly lock them in the cabin. Chi slightly relaxed. He took out a cigarette, lit it, and frowned. The woman's clothes don't look like she's just anyone. Sending her to the other side, won't that cause problems? Wallace Miller casually took one of his cigarettes and borrowed his lighter. His tone relaxed a bit. Nah, Mr. K checked her out. She's a friend of that big fish. Her family has some money, but it won't affect us. The $60 million was messed up because of her. If she doesn't pay a price, how can that be fair? She had already guessed the general situation. But now the people were on board. According to the rules, the boat was about to set sail immediately. He had no way to send this message out. These were 2 human lives. His heart sank to the bottom. He actively tried to think of a solution. This bitch let that little star run away, and she's his friend. Wally, do you think these incompetent fools downstairs might have left a trace? Maybe someone is following them? Wallace Miller tapped off the ash from his cigarette, leaned in close to his ear, and spoke quietly. Mr. K was worried about this too. So as soon as they arrived, they were sent straight over. He was afraid the cops might be following. Let's set sail quickly. This hot potato needs to be delivered right away, or we and the brothers on this boat might be in big trouble. Since the conversation had reached this point, Chi could only order the crew to set sail. After a few horns sounded, the fishing boat, docked at the harbor, sailed out into the sea. After sailing for half an hour, seeing that no other boats were following, Wallace Miller finally relaxed and started chatting with Chi. What did that woman shout just now? I didn't catch it clearly. Hearing this, Chi's heart, already a tangled mess, became even more chaotic. He didn't speak. Arthur Davis, eager to please him, readily jumped into the conversation. She seemed to shout something like, "Sincere, right, Brother Chi?" Wallace Miller glanced at him in response, drawing out a long O. Chi's body instantly tensed. He narrowed his eyes at both of them. She was just screaming randomly. How would I remember? What? Oh. Wallace Miller dropped his cigarette butt and pulled out his phone again, holding it out. Ethan, wasn't that the fish she saved? See, Ethan Johnson, she called him Ethan, calling him so intimately. Maybe they're old flames. Arthur also leaned in, looked at the photo, then suddenly turned his gaze to Chi's face and made a strange sound. Huh, this little star looks a lot like you, Brother Chi. No wonder that kid suddenly yelled out. Maybe she mistook him for you. Wallace Miller also looked up, his eyes alternating between the phone and Chi's face, his expression one of surprise. Yeah, there is a resemblance. Brother Chi, did you get plastic surgery to look like this little star? Hearing their words, Chi's heart sank, rose, and sank again. Only when he saw Wallace Miller's teasing smile did he confirm that they probably hadn't discovered his true identity. He squeezed out a smile, lifted his leg, and kicked both of them, his voice full of annoyance. Plastic surgery? My face is naturally handsome. Born this way, that little star probably had surgery to look like me. True that. Our brother here would send any extra cash straight to the casino. Wouldn't have the time or money for that. But brother, since you look so much like this little star, why don't you play the beauty trap? Find a way to get that 60 million and the 3 of us can split it quietly. Chi knew these 2 rascals were joking. He picked up the slippers and smacked them a few times. You know what kind of place that is over there? 60 million USD? Do you think this is fishing? Are you trying to get me killed so you can take over? The 2 held their heads and ran towards the boat's interior, begging for mercy. Brother, we're wrong, Al. Easy there. Chapter 19. After finishing dinner, Chi yawned and returned to his room. As soon as he locked the door, the smile disappeared from his face, leaving only a grim expression. He dipped his finger in some water and briefly wrote down what had happened today on the table. Things had gotten very tricky. With Seraphina Bellwether being brought onto the boat, it wasn't just about 2 lives anymore. It also involved the entire operation codenamed Hunter Seagull. If she said anything, he was at risk of being exposed at any moment. So the most urgent task now was to find a way to see her and make her keep quiet. Deep in the night, Chi pretended to have just woken up, holding a lamp and patrolling the cabin. Whenever they sailed, he would usually get up at night to inspect, and the guys on watch were used to it. He wandered from the bedside to the stern, looked back around, and then bent down to go into the basement. As soon as he entered, he tossed a pack of cigarettes to the guard and told him to stay alert. Then he took the key, opened the door, first checked on the punk, and then went to the corner. He had just squatted down when Seraphina Bellwether opened her eyes and stared at him steadily. He sneered, reached out his right hand, lifted her bruised chin, and clicked his tongue, sighing. "Not sleeping in the middle of the night? What are you looking at? Stare like that again and I'll gouge your eyes out in this eerie prison." His low voice was particularly chilling. But Seraphina Bellwether didn't show any fear, her gaze fixed on his wrist. He stared at her meaningfully for a long time, until she nodded slightly. Only then did he finally stand up and call the subordinate outside. "These 2 are prime fresh goods. The stuff in their bellies can catch fish. You check them again and keep their mouths tightly shut." After giving the orders, he strutted upstairs without looking back. As soon as he was gone, the subordinate who had been bowing and scraping didn't bother to check. He just blew out the lamp and lay down. The basement returned to darkness. But Seraphina Bellwether's eyes stared blankly in the direction he had left, warm tears welling up. She had overheard a lot in the past few days and knew she must have been kidnapped by a criminal syndicate. But she hadn't expected to run into Sincere Clark here. Although his hair was dyed blonde, he was wearing tattered clothes, and his face was thin and several shades darker. She still recognized him at a glance. She couldn't help but blurt out his name, only to get beaten for it. In that instant, she understood why he was here. He hadn't quit. Instead, he had taken on an undercover mission, infiltrating this criminal syndicate as a mole. The entire night, she replayed everything that had happened before he left. His birthday wish, the items that had gone missing, the trip to the cemetery the day before he left. It turned out everything had been traceable, she just hadn't noticed. And his deliberate visit tonight was also to confirm his identity for her. She would never forget the scar on his hand in her entire life, and she had understood the words he spoke before leaving. She must have been kidnapped by an organ trafficking organization and was about to be sent abroad to be brutally murdered. He needed her to stay quiet and not expose his identity. She could do that, but her heart couldn't stop pounding. For him. Chapter 20. The boat had been sailing for 2 days and 1 night and was set to reach Suinon by dawn. Chi still hadn't found a way to save them. He thought of many plans throughout the night, but they were all overturned. It wasn't until the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, and a commotion suddenly erupted outside the cabin, that he realized something must have gone wrong. He quickly got up and ran outside. The moment he stepped out, he bumped into a frantic Arthur Davis, who quickly blurted out what had happened. Brother, that punk broke free from the ropes and jumped out the window while the guard was in the bathroom." "The punk? What about Seraphina Bellwether?" Chi's heart leaped into his throat. He pushed through the crowd to the deck and immediately saw Seraphina Bellwether being held down by several men. His suspended heart dropped back down. He turned and walked towards Wallace Miller, who was slapping the guard who had been on watch. After Wallace Miller had finished venting his anger, Chi handed him a cigarette, looking down at the subordinate whose face was swollen, his voice cold. "How long had he been gone before you noticed?" 5 or 6 minutes. Chi's face instantly turned incredibly grim. About 10 minutes later, there was a commotion near the stern. Several soaking wet subordinates dragged the punk onto the deck. "Brother Chi, Big Wall, he drowned." "Drowned?" The 2 men exchanged glances, both seeing the look of despair on each other's faces after things had gone wrong. When the cold corpse was dragged over, an enraged Wallace Miller couldn't hold back anymore. He lifted his foot and stomped on the corpse several times. "God damn it, he's dead. How are we going to report this to Mr. K? You motherfuckers are going to pay for this $3 million at the mention of money." All the subordinates on the deck quickly lowered their heads, not daring to breathe. Chi's mind raced. He suddenly remembered the few things Wallace Miller had said during dinner yesterday. His eyes darted around, and he thought of a plan. He turned to Wallace Miller in disgust. "Since he's dead, nothing we can do about it. Let's salvage whatever we can from him and preserve it. At least cut our losses a little." At this point, that was the only way. Wallace Miller waved his hand and called for subordinates to handle the body. Before long, the person specifically responsible for dissections appeared with a knife. Those standing nearby quickly moved aside and brought over a sealed toolbox. The first cut sent the smell of blood instantly permeating the entire deck. Everyone present averted their eyes, not daring to look at the gruesome scene. Seraphina Bellwether just glanced at it and immediately started vomiting uncontrollably. Chi watched her vomit bitter bile, raised an eyebrow, and pulled Wallace Miller over to sit down. "Should be able to salvage about $100,000. $100,000? What the hell is that good for? Your casino debt alone is more than that. That was certainly true." Chai awkwardly rubbed his nose and quickly tried to make amends. "How about we stall for a few days? When last month's wages come through, we can pool our money." At the mention of wages, Wallace Miller got even more angry and immediately started cursing. "No need to wait. The money for the last batch of goods hasn't been sent yet. Those damn Suinan people are insisting that the goods delivered dawn. T matched the contract and are refusing to pay this criminal group, although engaging in illicit activities, operated under the guise of a fishing company on the surface. They smuggled organs under the pretense of selling fish and then swapped the goods in private. The agreement signed with the Suinan side was a commercial contract that had to go through legal procedures. Chi had heard about problems with this contract yesterday, and today the goods he was transporting had also gone wrong. He immediately thought of a way that might save Seraphina Bellwether. Eyeing Wallace Miller grabbing the conversational thread, Chi glanced sideways at Seraphina Bellwether, and indeed saw her covering her mouth. He slowly stood up, walked to the corpse, his voice full of surprise. "Problems with the contract? Wouldn't finding a lawyer to look at it solve it? A lawyer? What lawyer would dare take our case? Do you think Mr. K hasn't tried finding one? It's because he couldn't find one that he was planning to just swallow his pride and take the loss." Hearing this, Chi quickly put on an indignant expression, kicked the freshly severed arm at his feet towards Seraphina Bellwether. "Then what the hell are we gonna do? The casino boss is still hounding me for the money I owe." Chapter 21. The bloody severed limbs suddenly appeared before her eyes. Seraphina Bellwether was startled and snapped her head up, her gaze instantly locking with Chi's meaningful eyes. She shuddered, immediately understood his intention, and quickly struggled to get up, screaming repeatedly. Big Wall, I'm a lawyer. I can help you look at the contract and figure out what's wrong. Big Wall, please give me a chance to live." Hearing this, Wallace Miller immediately stood up and walked to her side, staring at her for a long time before hesitantly speaking. "You're a lawyer? Got a license? You're not trying to trick me, are you?" Seeing that the fish had taken the bait, Chi quickly added fuel to the fire, setting the stage. "Look at her state. Does she look like she has a license? Wally, don't get desperate and grab onto anything for those $3 million. You might bring a fake to Mr. K and end up in even worse trouble." Seraphina Bellwether understood the meaning behind his words and immediately clutched Wallace Miller's leg. "Big Wall, I really am a lawyer. You can check online. Sovereign Law Firm. Seraphina Bellwether. You can find it." Wallace Miller scratched his nose, slowly took out his phone and searched for a bit, a smile gradually appearing on his face. He waved his hand, telling someone to pull Seraphina Bellwether away, then pulled Chi aside to a secluded spot to discuss. "How about I send a message to Mr. K and mention it? See what he thinks? If we can salvage that $400 million contract, never mind a $3 million fish dying, even that $60 million mermaid who ran away won't be a problem. Chi knew his naturally suspicious nature and didn't jump at the chance. Instead, he said the opposite. What if this kid is lying to us or can't find any loopholes in the contract? Won't Mr. K still settle the score with us? I think we should just tell him the truth. It's only $3 million, just grit our teeth and scrape it together in half a year. Wallace Miller was greedy for money. Hearing half a year, his eyes widened. He was even more desperate to try. He tried persuading Chi for a long time before Chi reluctantly agreed, telling him to send a message and ask. About 10 minutes later, Mr. K replied, telling them to return immediately and bring the person. Wallace Miller was overjoyed, forcefully patted Chi on the back several times, his voice unable to hide his laughter. I told you it would work. Looking at this chick, she's probably genuinely capable. Just wait and see the sunrise rose from the horizon. The boat that had been drifting at sea for 3 days turned back before reaching the shore. Chi's heart finally settled down. 3 days later, the boat returned to Shanghai. Wallace Miller, with a few of the guys, escorted Seraphina Bellwether off the boat. Chi stood at the bow, watching their retreating figures growing distant, lowering his eyes to hide the complex emotions within them. He had done his best. The rest was up to Seraphina Bellwether's fate. He couldn't worry about her anymore. He turned back to his room, wrote down the situation of the past few days in detail, avoiding people to deliver it to his contact. That evening, Wallace Miller's call came through. Just by his tone, Chi knew things had mostly gone well. Brother Chi, this chick is really something. She found a loophole. After just looking at it a few times, Mr. K is very happy and decided to spare her life. Wages will be sent in a few days. See you at the usual spot. Then Chi was completely relieved. Facts proved as Wallace Miller said. 7 days later, 200,000 USD was deposited into his account. He withdrew it all, then made his way to the underground casino. After paying off the $10,000 he owed earlier, he went into a private room. As soon as he entered, Wallace Miller greeted him eagerly with a glass of liquor, offering a toast. He drank it in one gulp. Wallace Miller shouted, spoken like a true man, then pulled Seraphina Bellwether, who was behind him, over, indicating they should also offer a toast. Looking at Seraphina Bellwether's face, which had been treated for its injuries, Chi didn't accept her drink. He lay down on the sofa behind him, raising an eyebrow at Wallace Miller. Why is she here? What's going on? Wallace Miller knew he was unhappy. He waved Seraphina Bellwether out of the room, then sat down next to him and explained. It was Mr. K's idea. He wasn't comfortable keeping an unfamiliar face close by, so he told me to find a place to put her up. I figured since she was brought from your place, I'd send her back like she was. Besides, doesn't this chick like that little star? Brother Chi, since you look like that little star, she'll definitely be reluctant to run away if she stays with you. It saves us a lot of hassle. Take care of her for me. Give your brother some face. Chapter 22. Chi knew that Seraphina Bellwether was an unpredictable bomb, and he was indeed uneasy leaving her in someone else's hands. But to avoid raising suspicion, he declined a few times before reluctantly agreeing. Wallace Miller was afraid he would change his mind. He finished gambling and quickly saw him off. He didn't look at Seraphina Bellwether, just motioned with his hand and went downstairs. After leaving the casino, the two of them took a taxi back to the small fishing village. Seeing that no one was following them, Seraphina Bellwether turned around and called out, "See!" Before the word "Insiri" came out, Chi raised his left hand and slapped her, then sneered at her shocked expression. Didn't Wally teach you the rules? Don't think just because he brought you here I won't touch you. If you don't know your place, I'll kick you into the sea to feed the sharks. His words were full of warning and threat. Seraphina Bellwether knew he was reminding her that there were people watching. She glanced at the driver, didn't dare to speak, said "got it," and lowered her head. Upon returning to the boat, he led her into the cabin, then took a key from his waist and unlocked the door to the room directly opposite his. You'll live here now. Keep your wits about you, know what to say and what not to say. If you want to die, go die on your own. Don't drag me down with you." Since she had been kidnapped, for a full 18 days, Seraphina Bellwether hadn't slept a single good night. On her first night on the fishing boat, she could finally close her eyes in peace. The next day, she was woken up by a knock on the door. A ferret-faced man with sunken cheeks named Arthur Davis stood at the door, examining her for a while before speaking. "Brother Chi said you'll be following me from now on. Come with me, I'll show you around to get familiar." Seraphina Bellwether knew that Chi was Sincere Clark's undercover name. As early as meeting Mr. K, she had witnessed the syndicate's brutal methods and understood that she was living on the edge of a knife. She was very scared, but she never thought of escaping. As long as she could stay by Sincere Clark's side, whether it was a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, she was willing to navigate the danger with him. She knew he was dancing with wolves for a first-class commendation, for fairness and justice, and for serving his country, and she only for him. In the following days, Seraphina Bellwether followed Arthur Davis and gradually got to know the people on the boat, but she hadn't seen Chi the whole time, and couldn't help but worry a little. She found an opportunity to ask Arthur Davis, "Brother Arthur, why haven't I seen Brother Chi?" Arthur Davis tilted his mouth, his tone languid. "He just got paid. Of course our brother had to go try his luck. You're new here and don't know the rules. Stop asking about these things." Seraphina Bellwether knew this. Arthur Davis was a small-time crook who was just trying to scare her. She quickly offered him a cigarette, lit it for him, and said some pleasant words before managing to get some information about Chewie out of him. After so many questions, Arthur Davis also noticed something odd and stared at her for a long time. "Why are you asking so many questions? What's the meaning of all this? Brother Chi does look like your old friend, that little star, but I'm warning you, my hand has been hard since I was 14 or 15. If you dare to have any ideas about him, you might not see the sun tomorrow." Just as he finished speaking, Chi walked in with 2 dark circles under his eyes. He lifted his foot and kicked him in the backside. "What the hell are you rambling about me again? Arthur Davis, if you have nothing to do, get your ass out of here and go move some boxes of fish." Arthur Davis hadn't expected to be caught in the act. He scrambled out, tripping over himself. She watched him run, then turned to see Seraphina Bellwether staring at him. He scoffed coldly. "What are you looking at? You two, get out, don't do any work, but expect to eat Chapter 23. For the next month, the boat remained anchored at the port, with no apparent activity. Wallace Miller, however, came by every now and then, but not looking for QI. He was looking for Seraphina Bellwether. After resolving the $400 million contract issue, Mr. K was very pleased and satisfied, learning from experience. From then on, whenever there was business, he would have Wallace Miller bring Seraphina Bellwether along to carefully review the contracts. The people on the boat were quick to adapt. Knowing that Seraphina Bellwether was now in favor with Mr. K, they changed their attitude, even starting to call her sister Seraphina. Only Chi continued to order her around as usual, not giving her any special treatment. She didn't complain at all, doing whatever he told her to, being very obedient. With no work for a long time, the guys below started getting restless, subtly urging Chi to inquire about the situation. He also owed a large amount of money from the casino, so he seized an opportunity to probe Wallace Miller for information. No work for so long, the brothers are getting impatient. "What's the situation upstairs?" Wallace Miller glanced around, then leaned in close to his ear. "Don't worry, wait a few more days. A live net of fish is coming, enough for you to gamble for 7 days and 7 nights. Hearing this, Chi's heart couldn't help but race. A live net of fish meant dozens of human lives. He was incredibly nervous and quickly moved his hands, suppressing the shock in his heart. "All right, I'll wait for you to contact me. But make it quick, or Mr. Grant is seriously going to chop off my hand." Wallace Miller knew he had lost a lot of money these past few days and patted him on the shoulder, telling him to ease his mind. After watching him leave, Chi returned to his room and recorded the intelligence he had gathered. Then he borrowed 20,000 USD from Arthur Davis and took the money, pretending to go to the casino. While waiting for a car, he went into the village store at the head of the street, bought a pack of cigarettes, and handed over a large bunch of loose change. The owner counted it and gave him back $5. As he took it and turned around, he bumped into Seraphina Bellwether. The moment he saw her, his mind seemed to freeze. He walked over to her with a grim expression, his voice full of aggression. "You dared to follow me?" Seraphina Bellwether handed him a seashell she was holding and explained in a low voice. "Something happened on the boat. Arthur Davis is looking for you. I just distracted him and came over." Chi looked at her, half skeptical, took the seashell and turned back towards the beach. It turned out a few mischievous kids had snuck onto the boat and were caught in the act. Their parents had come over and were causing a scene. He didn't want to cause any more trouble, so he let the kids go and apologized, finally settling the matter. Early the next morning, Wallace Miller came again and took Seraphina Bellwether away. This time she was gone for a long time. She wasn't brought back until late the third night. Chi was lying in bed, resting, when there was a knock on the door. He got up, opened the door, and saw it was Seraphina Bellwether. His brows immediately furrowed. "It's the middle of the night. What are you making noise for while I'm sleeping?" Seraphina Bellwether looked at the few people smoking by the stairs and controlled her volume. "Big Wall asked me to give you a message." Hearing this, the people smoking voluntarily left. Chi stared at her for a long time before letting her in. As soon as the door was locked, she was about to speak, but he quickly raised his hand and tapped the table, pointing to a teacup. Seraphina Bellwether froze for a moment before realizing. She quickly followed him, sat down, dipped her finger in some water, and wrote a 5 and intent on the table. Wallace Miller said, "5 days later? This batch of big goods, they needed this urgently?" While Chi was thinking, Seraphina Bellwether wrote another line on the table. "I figured out where their base is, hidden in Witch Mountain." Chapter 24. The reason this syndicate became a thorn in the police's side was precisely because they were hidden deep within the vast mountains, making their base difficult to locate. And the reason Chi was undercover here was twofold. First, to rescue those kidnapped. Second, to gather information about the criminal group's lair. But he had only been there once. After that, he stayed by the sea, and Mr. K always contacted him through Wallace Miller as a single contact. Finding the location of the main lair had become almost an obsession for him in these few months. He knew that if they couldn't take down the entire network, they would still have a chance to rise again, which would mean the Hunter-Seagull plan would be a failure. And the longer he stayed undercover, the greater the chance of being discovered. He wasn't afraid of death, but he couldn't ignore the safety of his 2 undercover colleagues. So, upon receiving this crucial intelligence from Seraphina Bellwether, his eyes suddenly lit up. "Can you draw it?" Seeing Seraphina Bellwether nod, he got up and went to the wardrobe, found a cigarette box, tore it open, and handed the pen to her. It took her about 10 minutes to draw the map. Looking at the clearly marked landmarks on it, Chi felt like his heart was about to soar. He carefully folded the cardboard box and stuffed it into his cigarette pack. He planned to send it out first thing tomorrow morning. But things turned out differently than he had expected. Early the next morning, Wallace Miller arrived on the boat with 6 or 7 of the guys. He gathered everyone together and announced that the entire boat was under strict lockdown. No one would be allowed to leave the boat before setting sail. Chi's hand, tucked inside his pocket, couldn't help but tremble slightly. But he knew this was a crucial moment and couldn't make any rash moves. He suppressed the emotions in his heart and called a few people to help seal off the exits. The incident was sudden, and the guys were unprepared, causing quite a bit of grumbling. A few troublemakers clashed with Wallace Miller's men just to get off the boat. He had to talk them down painstakingly. 4 days passed. With the scheduled departure time approaching, Chi still hadn't found a suitable opportunity to send out this intelligence that could allow the Hunter-Seagull plan to be concluded. He only had 1 night left to figure out a countermeasure. He stayed up until midnight, Just as he was feeling anxious, there was a knock on the door. When he opened the door and saw it was Seraphina Bellwether, he became even more agitated. He scolded her in front of the other people. "What the hell are you doing in the middle of the night? I haven't been able to smoke for 2 days, and I can't even get a good night's sleep. Are you looking to get chewed out?" Hearing this, Seraphina Bellwether offered him a cigarette. He didn't even look at it and threw it back at her. "You think you can placate me with cheap garbage like this?" Get lost. Seraphina Bellwether picked up the cigarette, took a few steps forward, and stubbornly pulled open his pocket to stuff it in. Chi's heart skipped a beat, because while stuffing the cigarette, she slipped another cigarette box into his sleeve. But there was a group of people watching outside, so he couldn't retrieve it. He could only watch as she stepped back a few paces and blinked at him. "Smoke this for now. Just bear with it for a few days." He took a deep breath, broke the cigarette in half, and showed a contemptuous expression. "I don't need you to try and butter me up." She didn't respond to that. She nodded in acknowledgement, then turned and left with the others. Watching her figure disappear at the door, Chi's right eye twitched violently a few times. He knew something was going to happen tonight. Chapter 25. At 4 in the morning, there was a flurry of footsteps outside. Chi was also disturbed by the commotion, feeling agitated. About 10 minutes later, there was a heavy knock on the door. He waited for a bit, then slowly got out of bed, rubbing his eyes, and opened the door. Before he could say middle of the night, seeing Wallace Miller's ashen face, he quickly swallowed his words. "3 of your guys went rogue and snuck off the boat against orders." Chi's face also darkened. He pushed past the group of people at the door and headed towards the bow. The deck was brightly lit, clearly illuminating the 3 people kneeling on the ground. He saw Seraphina Bellwether kneeling in the middle at a glance, his heart pounding like a drum. Hearing the noise, Seraphina Bellwether also looked up and gave him a meaningful look. Chi understood her meaning. The message had been sent out. Wallace Miller paced over to his side and questioned them coldly about why they had snuck away. One of the bolder ones said they were tired of being cooped up, and since there were no cigarettes, they just wanted to go ashore to relax. Hearing this absurd reason, Wallace Miller couldn't help but laugh in anger. "You motherfuckers gonna die after a few days without smoking? I told you not to get off the boat. Are you looking for a death wish?" He was clearly cursing them, but his gaze was directed straight at Chi. Chi knew he was being asked to give an explanation. He scanned the 3 people, hardened his heart, and took the gun directly from Wallace Miller's pocket. Wallace Miller didn't stop him, watching him fumble with the safety, lift the gun with his injured right hand, trembling, aim at one person and pull the trigger. There was only 1 bullet in the gun. It hit the person on the far left in the shoulder. It was a minor injury, but it scared everyone present into a cold sweat. Wallace Miller was also stunned, hadn't expected him to be so ruthless. He quickly snatched the gun away, looked towards the shore multiple times, murmuring under his breath, "My word, you actually fired the gun. What if you attract the cops? We'll all end up in jail, won't we?" Chi looked at him with eyes full of coldness and spoke, his voice extremely indifferent. "My men made a mistake, so naturally I have to give Big Wall an explanation. It's just that my hand is crippled. I didn't hit well. If Big Wall isn't satisfied, do it yourself." Wallace Miller knew he was a ruthless man and didn't want to make things too difficult, but to set an example, letting them off easy was also out of the question. So he drew a knife from his waist, threw it to one of the men beside him, and stated the punishment with a laugh. "Since these 3 are hard of hearing, let's cut off 1 ear from each of them. It'll serve as a reminder to everyone else to watch and listen carefully from now on." As soon as the words fell, the entire ship fell silent. The person who received the knife didn't hesitate. He drew it from its sheath and slowly walked towards the 3 people. Chi was powerless to stop it and couldn't bear to watch. He turned around, forcing himself forward, and walked step by step towards the cabin. In the dead of night, a few painful wails startled the roosters in the fishing village awake. It was another morning. The original departure time was 7 o'clock in the morning, but even at 6 o'clock, Chi still hadn't received the cargo onto the boat. He didn't know what had gone wrong, but at this crucial juncture he didn't dare to inquire. He waited in his room until 6:40 when Wallace Miller came to knock on the door and tell him to set sail now. He didn't ask any questions, walked into the cockpit, and gave a few orders. For the next 2 days he didn't even leave his room, staying inside alone. Even his meals were brought to him. On the third morning, Wallace Miller came in with a bottle of liquor to make amends and explain the situation. He naturally gave him an out, drank his liquor, and managed to coax a few more words out of him. It turned out that because the quantity of this batch of goods was too large, the higher-ups had split it among several boats to depart sequentially. Because something had gone wrong the day before his boat was scheduled to depart, Mr. K, upon finding out, transferred the cargo for their boat to the other ships. To be on the safe side, the cargo-carrying ships delayed their departure by a day. His ship was still to set sail at the original time to scout the situation ahead. Chapter 26. This unexpected news didn't make Shi worry, because the smuggling route he had already reported to the organization after his last trip out to sea. Now that the most important intelligence had also been sent out, the Hunter-Seagull plan could be concluded. These variables wouldn't affect the overall situation and might even save the lives of those dozens of people. Sailing a day later gave the police more time for rescue. Everything was about to end. Thinking this, Chi gently smiled and fell asleep peacefully. When he woke up again, it was already 5 in the morning. He opened the window, looked at the gradually brightening sky, and walked onto the deck, wearing his jacket. The sea breeze ruffled his hair, but he didn't bother with it, leaning against the railing, staring blankly at the horizon. Before long, Seraphina Bellwether, her head still wrapped in gauze, walked up beside him. He didn't look at her, just quietly asked, "Does it still hurt?" Seraphina Bellwether didn't reply. She just looked at the scar on his wrist through the dim light. They stood there quietly until the fiery red sunrise rose. Only then did she finally speak. "It's ending, isn't it?" Chi didn't say anything, but his face broke into a genuine smile that came from his heart. Seraphina Bellwether smiled along with him. Footsteps sounded from behind. Someone was coming. They both turned around tacitly and walked towards the aft cabin together. Seraphina Bellwether looked at the lighthouse in the distance, her voice carrying a hint of anticipation. "What are your plans for the future?" Chi clasped his hands behind his back, his voice full of relief. "Hang up my cleats, find a small fishing village, and live out my retirement peacefully." Seraphina Bellwether's sentence, "Can I be your neighbor?" was just about to come out when she stopped herself, because she saw several warships sailing from the direction of the lighthouse, red flags fluttering overhead. This was Suinan waters. Seeing these ships meant everything was settled. Her eyes wide with shock, she looked at the person beside her, but only saw tears in his eyes. Sincere Clark raised his maimed right hand towards the flag, as red as the morning sun. Seraphina Bellwether's heart pounded violently. She was about to speak, but she heard screams from inside the cabin. "Cops, something's wrong. Big wall, goddammit, there's a mole." Sincere Clark naturally heard these sounds too. He exchanged a look with Seraphina Bellwether, and their eyes landed on the lifeboat beside them simultaneously. The ship was in chaos now. They still had time, so together they managed to push the small boat into the sea with effort. After the rope ladder was released, Sincere Clark shoved Seraphina Bellwether, telling her to go down first. She naturally refused, looking at him steadily with her dark eyes, her tone incredibly firm. "Your hand is injured. You go down first and take control of the lifeboat. I can swim. I'll jump in later directly. It'll save a lot of time." Time was critical. Sincere Clark knew her suggestion was the best option, so he grabbed onto the ladder and descended first. He successfully got into the lifeboat, then quickly looked up, but when he saw the situation above, his pupils widened abruptly. Seraphina Bellwether had already gotten halfway out, but Arthur Davis grabbed her and dragged her back in. The two wrestled with each other. Arthur Davis was thin and no match for her for a while. In panic, he yelled at the top of his lungs. Big Wall Seraphina Bellwether stole the lifeboat and is trying to escape as soon as the words fell. A large group of people rushed towards the aft cabin. Seraphina Bellwether's heart suddenly went into turmoil. She lost strength in her hands, and Arthur Davis managed to free himself. He pulled a knife from his waist and plunged it into Seraphina Bellwether's leg. She grunted in pain. With all her strength, she swung her arm, throwing Arthur Davis off. She pulled out the knife from her leg, hearing the increasingly urgent footsteps, and turned her body. With a blood-stained, razor-sharp knife, she cut the rope that formed the ladder. Splash, the 10-meter rope ladder fell into the sea. Without the rope connecting it, the lifeboat was tossed by the waves and blown by the wind, drifting away. Sincere Clark didn't know what was happening on the ship. He only saw Seraphina Bellwether waving to him from a distance. He clutched the rope tightly but couldn't control the boat's direction. He could only watch the iron fishing boat getting further and further away from him. The sound of the waves drowned out everything else. He couldn't hear anything. He only felt something climbing up from his chest, spreading into his limbs, devouring his last shred of rationality. It wasn't until the sound of the ship's horn blared loudly from above that he snapped back to reality, looked up, and saw the vibrant red flag. The next second, a huge explosion sounded from very far away. He turned around and saw a ball of fiery flames burning on the sea. It was a ship, sacrificing itself in flames, competing with the sky full of rosy clouds. Seen from a distance, it looked remarkably like a lit lighthouse. Chapter 27. When the Hunter Seagull plan was publicly announced, it was already summer in Kyoto. Ethan Johnson stared blankly at the news report, then lowered his head and clutched the lilies in his embrace. Tears, like morning dew, rolled down the white petals. He didn't know how much time had passed before the driver stopped the car and opened the door. "Sir, we've arrived." Only then did he wipe away his tears, put on his sunglasses, and get out of the car. It was the weekend, and quite a few people were visiting the cemetery. He avoided the crowd and walked towards the deeper section, stopping beneath a pine tree. Looking at the smiling photo on the tombstone, the tears he had just stopped welled up again. He remembered Seraphina Bellwether telling him when they were children that his crying was what she feared most. He quickly forced down the bitter taste in his nasal cavity. He bent down, about to place the flowers in his hand, but saw a bouquet of white daisies already placed there. Ethan Johnson realized something and looked around the area. He looked around for a long time but didn't see anyone suspicious. Only then did he withdraw his gaze. After neatly placing the lilies beside the chrysanthemums, he put his hands together in front of his chest, closed his eyes, and spoke many, many words in his heart. "Seraphina, my first performance after my comeback is tomorrow. Will you be very happy when you know? Your Uncle Bellwether and Aunt Bellwether know about everything you did. They are very proud of you. I will take good care of them, you can rest assured. I will remember your words, dance well, and live well. Don't worry about me. He came to see you too. You must know, right? Did he tell you that he received a first-class commendation? You should be happy for him too, right?" After the autumnal equinox, the weather slowly turned cooler. After dinner, Sincere Clark put on his jacket and slowly walked along the stone path up the small hill. The autumn wind ruffled his freshly cut short hair, tickling his neck. He reached up and brushed it away, looking at the brilliant sunset sky. A memory from long ago suddenly flashed through his mind. Back then, he wasn't just a junior officer at the local police station, but a top-performing member of the Criminal Investigation Division with the most commendations. He also had a girlfriend, a lawyer, who would wait for him outside his office building every day after work. After they had dinner together, they would walk along the road, together watching the colorful autumn leaves, talking about many dreams for the future. He told her with a smile that he had two dreams. One was to receive a first-class commendation. The other was to grow old together with the person he loved. The person beside him also smiled at him very firmly, telling him what he desired would surely come true. He believed her, took her hand, and walked home slowly. Time had passed, and Sincere Clark turned back again, only to find himself alone. He stood blankly for a long time before picking up his steps again. Couples walking hand in hand, noisy families of 3, old men and women helping each other down the mountain passed by. But he remained alone. He didn't know how long he walked before getting tired and sitting down on a chair by the sea. He looked up, gazing at the distant lighthouse flickering in the deepening night, and murmured a complaint. You fraud.